Max Payne 3 is one of the most well-designed third-person shooters I think I've played in my entire life. From how well Max controls, to enemy AI placement, to level design, and how varied the levels are a lot of the times within the same stage, to how well all these things fold in with the themes of Max's character at this point in the series, and of course with the story as a whole, this game is just such a delight. Such a delight to play, especially since it feels so good. It feels so good. It's like butter. This game plays like stuffed French toast. Playing this game feels like you're indulging in some prime top-of-the-line braised short ribs with a side of roasted garlicky and lemony asparagus with a brick of sweet honey cornbread and a fresh ice cold glass of Dr. Pepper cream soda, just ostentatiously rich, ostentatiously overindulgent. It's pure ecstasy. Now, the reason why I believe it feels this way is going to be a little bit hard to describe, because this is one of those more, you have to feel it to understand it type things, but I will try my best. If I had to describe Max's movement, I would say that Max controls like a very precise ragdoll, and that almost sounds oxymoronic, but it really is the way the game feels, because when you move Max, he moves the way your brain would expect him to, almost like he's in a real physical space. When you accidentally bump into or dive into a cabinet or wall, he hits it in the way you would expect him to. When you do a dive and hit the ground, there's a discernible weight to his character that you can almost feel the thud when he does it. He takes cover like you'd expect him to, he gets up like you'd expect him to, like a 38-year-old man who just jumped on his back. He shoots like you'd expect him to. Everything he does just feels right. And the same thing can be said about all the guns in the game, from the sound design to how they feel to shoot, to the recoil, to the range, to the weight that they have and how it affects Max's body. It just feels correct. The reason I bring up weight is because unlike the first two games where Max basically had a infinite armory pocket dimension in his leather trench coat, Max in this game is limited to the amount of guns that he can carry into a situation because they decided to make the guns more disposable. You can either carry two small guns, that's two pistols or two handheld SMGs, two small guns and a medium gun like an MP5, or two small guns and a long gun. However, you can only use one small gun at a time because he needs the other hand to hold on to the long gun. While Max won't necessarily slow down, he'll bend his knees a little bit. The way he gets up off the ground after you dive is affected a little bit. He opens doors a little bit differently. He reloads a little bit differently. His aiming's affected a little bit because he leans just a little bit to the side. It all just makes sense. Like, yeah, he's holding a pump action shotgun in one hand and a Colt 45 in the other. He should be getting up off the ground a little bit differently if he does a full side dive. Another reason I like this weapon system is because the combination of highly disposable guns that you're constantly going to be switching out and highly destructible cover that you can't hide behind for too long or else you're going to get hit regardless, combined with AI that's constantly hounding you and trying to get around you, forces a lot of on-the-fly experimentation and decision-making. Not only does this lead to a very fun game, but it also further feeds into Max's identity as a overpowered underdog, an underdog with superpowers. Like, yes, this man can slow down time to take accurate shots, but also he's against odds that are so ridiculous that he's still incredibly killable. In fact, you are extremely killable in this game. I was playing on normal and still died more than I thought I would. But because the game feels so good to play, you almost enter this flow state where Max just becomes an extension of you and your controller or your keyboard and mouse or Donkey Konga bongo controller. And the fact that this game has an excellent checkpoint system and a last stand system where if you get shot by the dude that did the fatal blow, but you kill them before you hit the ground, you actually get to live. You almost never leave the mindset of, I got this. I'm him. I'm Mad Max. I can't be stopped, even though I've died 13 times on this one level. The amount of times I've died in certain sections of this game is definitely on the level of embarrassing. Very embarrassing, in fact, especially the footage I'm showing you right now. Hey man, I said it was a good game. I didn't say I was good at the game. Yeah, the ebb and flow between offense and defense and defensive offense and offensive defense, it's just, God, this game is amazing, dude. I'll never forgive Max Payne fans for letting this $100 million game that actually feels like it cost $100 million to make fucking flop. We'll get to that at the end of the video, but for now, we have to talk about Now, outside of destructible cover, the level design in this game is immaculate, and with each level giving you a litany of different environments to fight in. And while each environment is distinct, they all flow in a way that feels natural. If a level starts more open, it will gradually constrict. If it starts more constrict, it will gradually open up. However, they all have this coning effect where they naturally push you to where you need to go without needing to use, yellow paint or caves. And if you somehow get lost, don't worry, Max will start talking out loud about where he needs to go, because that's just what he does. I understand it's his internal monologue, but it's a lot more funny to think that he's just talking in the air to nobody, kind of like what I'm doing right now at 1:30 a.m. one day before this video is supposed to go up on the internet. For example, in one of the levels, you start off by pushing a terrorist through a window where you're flying through the air in slow motion and all the enemies are below you while you're heading towards the dance floor. After you hit the ground, you're on the dance floor and all the enemies that were below you are now above you. However, it's hard for them to hit you while you have the baddie sliders turned up. Eventually, you run towards a locked door and it turns out, well, it's a locked door, so now you need to head back towards the dance floor, and now all the enemies that were originally above you are now below you, and now you're above the new wave of enemies that just came out from the other non-locked door. Using the various cover options and maneuvering options you've now been given as you're heading back down towards the dance floor, you then can head towards the next room, eventually fighting your way through a whole series of different private rooms and hallways that are now twisting and turning as you're trying to track down your VIPs. In fact, most of your VIPs were heading towards the helipad since you came here on helicopter. However, one of them got captured immediately because Max is kind of bad at his job, but don't worry about that. He'll redeem himself as the game goes on. However, eventually, after fighting through all these rooms that vary in both space and design, you make your way to the helipad and realize that only one of your VIPs made it out. However, another one is escaping on the rooftop, so now you're on a helicopter with a gun aiming down at the rooftop that you were just on, trying to provide overwatch for your VIP. But, spaghetti-o, a dude pulled out an RPG, and now you're hanging on the bottom of a helicopter with an Uzi shooting at both RPG rounds and people on the rooftop in order to protect this VIP. Eventually, Max realizes that it's a lot easier just to land on the rooftop, so he drops himself off, and now you're on this rooftop that you would think would be wide, but actually has a crazy mix-up of both wide and tight spaces, because at some points you'll be fighting people in front of signs, and at other points you'll be fighting people on the stairs, and then you'll head upstairs, and there's this other area that has different, ventilation systems and different sorts of HVAC equipment, tiny rooms that other enemies can pop out of because there's multiple entrances to this rooftop. It's ridiculous. And ladies and gentlemen, this is only the second level of the game. Like, this game is crazy, dude. It only turns it up after this. Each level in this game just continues to turn it up, folding in concepts and level design elements from the previous levels and remixing them while introducing a whole ton of new stuff. It's just dopamine straight into your brain. Just a dopamine lobotomy, a syringe right behind the eye, dude. It's crazy. Like in one of the levels later on, you're trying to give ransom money for one of the hostages, but it's a setup, so you get shot and now you're bleeding out while the level's happening, and it's in a stadium, so you have to retreat inside the stadium. And while you retreat inside the stadium, you're fighting people on the stairs, and you're fighting people in these different locker rooms and hallways and all these weird places that enemies can hide. Then you eventually make your way back outside, and it's a sniper battle, and you're also shooting at people in the bleachers, and there's a sniper shooting at you again who's the same sniper from before, and you have to make your way around it. It's crazy. It's crazy. The fact this game flopped will sadden me until I die. And the real area of this game where you see all of this culminate is the favelas, because it's basically everything I just said about all the previous levels turned up to 155 gabillion zillion, nigga. There's enemies below you, above you, in wide areas, in tight areas, and areas you wouldn't even expect. And you have to spend all this time fighting your way up the favela, and then the next half starts and you have to spend all this time fighting your way back down. How did this game flop? It's so cool. Why? Like I said before, straight dopamine to the frontal lobe, bro. Like the upgrade system from the evil within. While getting lost in this game is borderline impossible because of what I said before, the coning effect, that doesn't mean there isn't more open areas to explore. Like, there's collectibles to find, golden gun parts, lore stuff, things to read. Like, I wouldn't even describe this game is open zone. It's incredibly linear, but it's not quite on a railroad track. It's more like you're in a hallway, and this hallway is really wide and also has a lot of rooms in it, because there's things to find. I missed a lot of the golden gun parts. I didn't even know certain doors could be open until I looked up a guide later on. So there's stuff to discover, but it is definitely more on the linear side of video games, which is fine. Now, one of the major criticisms of this game back when this game originally came out is that Max Payne lost the sauce. The vibe is gone. It no longer looks like a comic book. He no longer has a weird face. The aesthetic is no longer shades of silver and brown, because those are the only two colors in the original game. The vibes are wrong. However, even with this point, I heavily disagree, because there are points in this game where the vibes are exactly the same as the original. However, for the first half, the vibes of Max Payne original and the new area that Max Payne is in are clashing, and this is done very intentionally, in my opinion. And it's also very obvious why this is happening in-game. Max, at least for the first half of this game, is quite literally a directionless, aimless fish in a brand new ocean. He's retired. He's self-medicating. He's no longer investigating his family murder. That's done. He's no longer trying to stop drug dealers who worship the moon or whatever was going on in the second game. He lost his original love interest. He lost his second love interest. He's quite literally doing nothing at the beginning of this game, and only starts doing something because one of his old friends from the academy got him a job as a bodyguard for some rich people from Brazil, a completely different country. But now this self-loathing, very sarcastic, self-deprecating, self-medicating ex-detective is now a bodyguard for a bunch of rich people who do not care if he lives or dies and do not care about his perspective in a foreign nation that also doesn't give a shit about his perspective and definitely doesn't care if he lives or dies, because this country doesn't really care about Americans at all. Basically, for the entire first half of the game, Max is either being manipulated or disregarded by everyone around him. You can see it represented by how the game tries to do all these comic book like angles in its cutscenes, but the world is moving too fast around him that it can never settle, and his thought process and inner monologue are always broken up by either somebody interrupting him or some flashing light, which could just blatantly be representing how cooked his brain is from the years of sipping pills and popping whiskey. I mean, say what you want, but this man has been using alcohol and painkillers to heal since 2001. His brain is absolutely fried. However, once he realizes halfway through the game that he has to lock in because he needs to do some detective work to uncover an entire conspiracy that might not only involve the people who hired him, but also an entire foreign government as a whole, and he shaves his head and he pours that alcohol down the sink, you can see the game, the vibes, they come back. The noir vibes, they start seeping back into the game. The camera settles more into these comic book angles. His inner monologue is a lot more clear. There's a lot less annoying flashing text. You're still popping painkillers to heal, but I'd imagine that it's a lot harder to shake an opioid addiction than alcohol. So we'll give him a pass on that one. And I think that's just a really cool idea. I think it's a cool idea to take this noir, the question type detective with guns and an alcohol addiction and put him in a world where no one gives a shit about what he's thinking about. However, as the game goes on, he still continuously chooses to do the right thing regardless of how much the world doesn't care about his perspective. Because deep down, underneath all the sadness and the self-loathing and the sarcasm and the cheeky grinning and the opioids and the whiskey, Max is a good dude. He's still a good guy. There's a reason that he stuck to being a detective even after everyone thought that he killed his family, because he's just that kind of person. Like, there are a lot of points in this game where Max could choose to lead. There are points in his investigation where he's not getting paid. He's just doing it because he knows it's the right thing to do. Like, he does not need to be getting involved with all of these interconnected conspiracies with these rich oligarchs and a police force that's completely corrupted and a government that might even be more corrupted. And yet he chooses to do so because someone's depending on him and he's trying to save them. He's choosing to use his skills for an in general good thing, because that's the type of guy he is, even though he'll never believe it himself. think that a game like this, being so well made and getting excellent reviews both when it launched in 2012 and still on Steam to this day, having amazing reviews, it would be one of those pillars of gaming, like God of War, Mario 64, Halo 3, Diablo 2, Warcraft, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Ocarina of Time, Uncharted 2, or Fallout New Vegas. You know, one of those games that's constantly praised by the gamer gods of this world, like top 10 Path of Exile 2 player President Elon Musk. But it isn't. And the reason why is actually fairly simple. It's because it's Max Payne 3. That's it. That's literally it. If this game was called quite literally anything else, like Joe Schmo's shoot 'em up, shoot 'em down adventure, it would probably be remembered as a top 10, top 20 video game of all time. But it isn't, because it's Max Payne 3. And Max Payne fans kinda suck. And that's it. Like, comment, subscribe, check out the coffee, check out YouTube memberships, and I will see you next time. I'm just joking. The real reason is because most Max Payne fans are very old and don't believe a single good video game has come out since 2009. And now the video's over. I'm joking. It's a joke. I'm just yanking your chain, dude. I'm just rocking your boat. Please delete the thesis paper comment, please. The real reason is because a lot of original fans do not like the fact that Remedy sold the Max Payne IP to Rockstar, even though Rockstar helped them make the first two games in the early 2000s. The reason Remedy did this is because they needed money, because while Remedy makes really good games, I don't think they made a single profitable one until Control in 2019. Listen, man, Alan Wake, amazing game. The only reason it has a sequel, though, is because Control was successful enough that they could sell DLC for Control, something I don't think Remedy has ever been able to do. Listen, Alan Wake 2, I've heard good things. It sold well, it reviewed well, it's got a lot of DLCs coming out. Remedy is on the up right now, but they weren't on the up for a long time. As a kid and teenager, whenever I heard news about Remedy Studios, it was either they were filing for bankruptcy or almost filing for bankruptcy. Screw Attack came and went before Remedy made a single cent. But you know, with the announcement of Remedy and Rockstar teaming up again, like it's the early 2000s, to do the Max Payne 1 and Max Payne 2 remaster, I think enough time has passed, truly, where I can say that the game that came out 12 years ago just might have aged a little bit better than the game that came out when the Twin Towers were still a place that you could visit. Just for even more of a reference to, like, you know, paint an even better picture, the distance between Max Payne 1 and now is the same distance between Max Payne 1 and the Atari 2600. Or about 25 years. And I think my true relationship between me and older video games, including video games from my own childhood, Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1, that was a big hitter for me in my childhood, Open Season for the Nintendo GameCube. I think my relationship for me and old video games can be best described by David Lynch's relationship between him and film. Before David Lynch passed away, a couple years ago, he did an interview about, you know, digital video versus film. And when asked about it, he was like, listen, man, film's great. Film introduced me into making movies. I'm paraphrasing, by the way. Film is this fantastic medium. I'm never touching that shit again. I am using digital video for the rest of my life. Because as he described it, film is a dinosaur. It is just a hassle. You have different prints. You have to preserve it a certain way. You have to make sure they're not lagging when you're showing it in theaters. You have to make sure you actually time the switching of the reels. He just didn't want to deal with that shit anymore. And my view isn't as harsh as, you know, I don't want to touch these again. I still like interacting with old games. I like interacting with games from my childhood and from before my childhood, but I have come to this realization recently that these games are old. They're dinosaurs. They have old video game problems. These games aren't bad. Max Payne 1 and 2 are masterpieces for the time frame they came out in, especially 1, which came out in 2001, and 3D integrated graphics hadn't even existed for like 10 years. But man, replaying that game as like a fully cognizant adult who has lived through technology and video games advancing, a lot of ways for the better, a lot of ways for the worse too. I hate battle passes, but going back to these games, you know, fully functioning brain, it's just like, man, I'm getting annoyed. But then I have to catch myself, because it's like I'm getting mad that the 25-year-old game is playing like a 25-year-old game, but the problem is that the 25-year-old game is playing like a 25-year-old game. Like, a lot of these games have like weird motion blur, and the hit detection is off a lot of the time, and of course it's off because it's 25 25 years old. Playing the old Max Paynes, man, sometimes it feels like I'm firing a BB gun into the ether and hoping for the best. Like, it's a pain, but it's also 25 years old. To use a game from my childhood as an example, Tales of Symphonia, the original release for PS2 and GameCube, that has insane motion blur that hurts my eyes. And for a game where doing combos is crucial to rack up damage, the input lag is insane. It is severe. You literally have to think like 4 button presses ahead. It's ridiculous. But it's also 25 years old. So it's just like, yeah, these are old video game problems. I know a lot of you might be like, oh, that's because you need to play it on PC and install this mod and that mod and that mod and this mod. But that's the thing, right? That's a modern solution to old problems. We're using the same modern tech that's already in Max Payne 3 to make Max Payne 1 and 2 better experiences that still aren't as good as Max Payne 3 in my opinion. And that's purely because Max Payne 3 had better access to better technology and more money, since it wasn't being made by Remedy and being made by Rockstar, who just had $100 million to throw at it. But you know, if that's the QB, this is the O-line, here's the kicker. When the Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes come out, those are probably going to be the best Max Payne experiences. They're going to be better than the original. They're going to be better than 3. However, as of right now, as of March 6th, 2025, Max Payne 3 is the best one. I don't want to hear it. Argue with your mama. And now that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you think my opinion's good, like the video. If you think my opinion's bad, also like the video, because dislikes don't actually do that much anymore. Subscribe. Thank you to all the Ko-fi supporters. If you don't want to support on Ko-fi, which is $1 a month, we also have YouTube memberships now. The price is a little bit higher. It's $2.99 because YouTube takes a ridiculous amount of money, and if I only charged $1, I would only see 20 cents. But by doing so, you get access to the Untitled Vlog Show, which is just the bonus yap where we do whatever. For the 100 Sorry We're Closed fans, don't worry, it's coming back. And for the people who don't know what that series is, don't worry, there's a whole playlist. And also, I will be making a compilation video of all the parts. It'll be called Sorry We're Closed the Movie. It'll be coming out probably some point after the Elden Ring speedrun, because I'm going to need something fast to do after the Elden Ring speedrun. However, next stop is the Elden Ring speedrun, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.